edition of Spotlight on Natural Resources. I'm Bill Wasner. With me is Jason Haupt. Jason is with the University of Illinois Extension and is going to tell me about how we can attract wildlife to our backyards and, well, front yards, and how we can attract wildlife in general. So why don't you start by telling us what it takes to create a good habitat for wildlife?
Well, to create a good habitat, you have to understand what is needed for a habitat. And you need space, you need shelter, you need water, and you need food to create a good habitat for any wildlife. And the space is kind of the easy part. You have your backyard, you have your front yard, you have your neighborhood, and that's your space. And so making sure that you don't have big privacy fences and making sure that you don't have a lot of obstructions to creating just a very segmented neighborhood and just kind of a highly separated neighborhood helps create that space so that the wildlife is able to move through. And this is true for birds, this is true for rabbits, this is true for any of the wildlife that you potentially want to attract to your yard. Creating a good open space is kind of the first step. And the way you do that is you work with your neighbors and you don't build these giant privacy fences. I know sometimes you don't want to see your neighbor's yard, but if you really are truly wanting to attract wildlife, you don't want to create a big privacy fence. And so instead of having that privacy fence, you're choosing plants that are going to provide that privacy instead. So choosing evergreen trees that are going to grow in a windbreak or something along those lines. It's going to allow the wildlife to pass through, but then is also going to give you that visual block that you want. So then you need shelter. And this comes in a lot of different forms. Birdhouses are a good way to do that for attracting birds, but making sure that you have trees and bushes and areas that provide shelter for a number of different animals and a number of different types of wildlife is going to give you that shelter requirement. And food and water, we put our bird feeders out, but you can plant a lot of really beneficial plants that are going to provide that food source, and that water source can be very simple. It can just be a bird bath that you fill up all the time, and that's going to provide water for not only the birds, but it's also going to provide a water source for a lot of different types of wildlife. Or you can go really complicated and you can put a water feature in your backyard that's going to be a pond and a waterfall, and it's going to give you everything that you are looking for in that farm as well. And so making sure that you have all four parts of the habitat are going to create a habitat that's going to be attractive and beneficial to the wildlife.
And really, our next question kind of follows along. You've already talked about birds and you mentioned rabbits, but are there other types of wildlife we can be considering attractions?
Yeah, a lot of people don't really consider insects as wildlife, and attracting your insects and your pollinators is a really big thing. People are always looking for ways to attract butterflies and to create habitat that's beneficial to native pollinators and native bumblebees. And so having a habitat that is beneficial to your insects is also going to be beneficial to a number of different types of wildlife as well. Having a healthy insect population is a benefit to the birds, because the birds are looking for a lot of insects in their larval forms as food sources for their young. They also need that protein source at least at some point in their life. Even those birds that you see at the bird feeders all the time, they need that protein source that they get from insects for a portion of the year, so that they are able to reproduce and they're able to feed their young and do what needs to be done there. If you live out in the country and you want to attract other types of wildlife, you could potentially attract deer or other types of larger wildlife that you might want to see as well. So providing areas that are going to be open and easy access is going to give you the benefits of attracting some of that larger wildlife. But birds and pollinators are the two big that everybody always wants to know about. How do I make my backyard more attractive to the birds and the pollinators?
That sounds good. What are the benefits, though, for humans for attracting wildlife?
Well, there is a lot of benefit to having a nice nature uh, native area that you can really have that attracts that wildlife. The view of nature has a lot of benefits to your mood and has a lot of benefits to your mental health, and a lot of times attracting wildlife furthers that benefit, especially when you're seeing the birds moving around your backyard and you're seeing the butterflies move around your backyard, or you're seeing those pollinators as they're going from flower to flower. That has a really positive impact on your mental health. It improves your concentration. It improves what's known as mental fatigue. It reduces mental fatigue, and it's also is highly beneficial to kids, where they can see the wildlife out the window, or they can sit in the backyard and watch wildlife and just have that natural native area that they're able to interact with, and have that green space that they're able to interact with. And so it just has a lot of benefits to our mental health and to our personal health as well. And attracting wildlife also benefits those pollinators, and we hear a lot about in the news pollinators being under threat, and being that their habitats being destroyed, and that their numbers are declining. And we need those pollinators for farming and for a lot of the food that we eat on a regular basis. If we don't have pollinators and we're not creating habitat, large amounts of habitat for them so that they can thrive, we lose a lot of that food that we depend on in the grocery store.
Sounds good. So, are there things that we should avoid doing when trying to attract wildlife?
One thing that you want to keep in mind when you're attracting wildlife and you're planning your flower beds and you're planning your gardens for the year is that natives are always going to be better. And so avoiding the plants that are cultivars, or avoiding those plants that aren't, they are very popular at your garden stores, but are maybe not as beneficial to a wide variety of wildlife, is something that you want to avoid. Keep in mind that native plants and your native plants are going to provide a much broader range of wildlife benefits than what the non-native plants are going to. They provide food for a much wider range of animals, and they provide food and shelter for a much wider range of insects and things like that. And so trying to stick to your native plants and not plant something that is not necessarily native, but is pretty, is something that that you can definitely do to better your habitat. One thing that a lot of people love to do is put out those hummingbird feeders, and those are fantastic. They're a great food source for hummingbirds. And so one thing that you really want to avoid is using any of those pre-mixed hummingbird foods that have red dye. That's very dangerous for your hummingbirds. It causes problems with their health and can actually be deadly for the hummingbirds. And so and to be perfectly honest, mixing your own is very, very easy. It is 4 parts water to 1 part sugar. So if you're making 4 cups of nectar, you are going to do a 1/4 cup of sugar in those 4 cups of water, and you boil it and you cool it down and you put it in your hummingbird feeder. And it's so much less expensive than what you can buy in the store, and doesn't have any of the dangers associated with that red dye that's in there. And one of the biggest things that you can do to benefit wildlife is to avoid using pesticides.
One other question. Where
Okay.
can we go to get more information?
You can get a lot of information from the University of Illinois Extension's website. There's a really good page, Living with Wildlife, that is a good place that you can get a lot of information from. You can check out my blog, which is an Illinois River Almanac, and that is on the Extension website as well, and is accessible from there. And I've written multiple articles about attracting wildlife and attracting pollinators and some do's and don'ts. So that's a really good resource as well.
Very good. For another edition of Spotlight on Natural Resources, this has been Bill Waisner and Jason Haupt.